start the recording. Great. So I'd like to call the May meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission to order. I'm Hillary Hedges-Rayport, Chair of the Commission, and I just like to remind everybody that we're being recorded, so just be careful of what you share on the screen. The meeting is being held remotely, and please direct your questions to the chair. If you have questions, and we have an agenda, it's posted on the town website, and hopefully we'll be able to get through everything on the agenda. So the meeting will be aired later on the town YouTube channel. So I'm going to go around and confirm attendance, and please confirm that you can hear me. We have Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Angus McLeod.
Here.
Clement Durkees.
Here.
Susan Handy.
Here.
Holly Backus, our preservation planner.
Present.
We have George Butterworth, friend of the Historical Commission.
Here.
Welcome. And it looks like we have some attendees for the request for a letter of support that is going to happen at the end of the agenda. So welcome everybody. And hi, Erin, how are you? Thanks for joining us. We do have some other things to cover before we get to your agenda item, but just hang out and we'll get to you as soon as we can. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to turn, the first item on the agenda is update about our surveys. So I'm going to turn that over to Holly.
Thank you. So as you all are more than likely aware, PAL has been busy working. They've been on island, they've gone back, and as you know that their project, their scope is two different scopes. So one is to tackle our fish lots and the other is to tackle the entire island. As of this week, as you saw in your packet, they're working on the survey plan phase 2 with the neighborhood analysis, the list that we all worked on compiling, and they're working on their data and making sure that they can deliver what was requested in the scope, as well as what they said that they would be able to scope. They've been working with myself and our GIS coordinator, their GIS coordinator, trying to match discrepancies with the data. Of course, one of the biggest things, as you all know, the NHL data that was created when NPT received the CPC fund to update our NHL nomination back in 2012. We have that 300 and some odd page Excel spreadsheet that has every single property that was basically in existence at that time. They're trying to take that data, and that data basically has never been digitized, if you will. So there's no cross-reference with our GIS, and that's one of the big tackles that they're trying to do, so they can correlate all the data that they've received from Macris, and then all the data that we've been able to give them, and kind of have it so the GIS will be in sync. And this obviously is going to be something that will be utilized for those future projects down the road. So for instance, obviously our next one that we're going to be doing for fiscal year 2022 will be for the Brant Point, and obviously finishing up the fish lots. So as of next week, we should be able to receive something from PAL giving us an actual explanation on how they're going to fix that situation for us. And I have just thanked them tremendously, because this is a big task. This is probably one of the largest historic districts that they've done for a survey plan ever. Obviously that they've been around for 40 years, and this isn't new to them, and Nantucket's not new to them, but data obviously, and trying to make sure it's all succinct is important. So that's where that stands.
So I just want to make sure everyone understands where we are with the survey in terms of the technical aspects that Holly is just explaining. So I just want to make sure also that I understand. So
Mhm.
the issue is we're trying to integrate this with GPS, with our town GIS, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Which will have enormous benefits, because then when our plus department has an application or wants to know more about a parcel, they always go to their GIS, and there will be a layer of historic information, survey data that's organized right there. Right, Holly?
Yes, so basically, if you go onto the town's website right now, we do actually, within the past year, received MHC's layer. So anything that is available in Macris is available in our GIS. However, as we all know, we have donut holes, we have information that has not been translated to the state as far as HDC surveys go, way back in the 80s. So really and truly, it's not consistent, and what PAL is doing is making it so we will have that layer, and we will be able to, as we phase out this whole survey plan multiple years, we'll be able to, they'll be succinct. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it'll all be synced up. And so is what you're saying that it's just extra work to get the framework in? I mean, is this a data entry issue, or is it a data cleaning issue that they're running?
They have encountered some issues and discrepancy with the data sets that they're trying to use, which is GIS jargon, trying to link everything.
So, and the data sets that they're using is, I mean, they downloaded information from the town GIS. Where else did what are the data sets that they're using?
They're using the NHL data, which I helped clean up so that way it was consistent and succinct. There
Right.
was headings in there that was not necessary, those type of things.
And
They're
that's
also
just to
using,
clarify, that's just a spreadsheet, right?
yeah,
A list of
Excel
addresses.
spreadsheet,
List of
right?
addresses.
Which, you know, I don't know if anybody's familiar with how with ArcView works with Esri, which is the GIS base. There's base data that we have. There's multiple different layers that our GIS coordinator provided to them in their GIS coordinator. So I wasn't involved exactly what, but they're taking that information along with our NHL data information, along with the Macris information, and compiling it all together. So as you can imagine, trying to make sure that the data is consistent. I'll give you an example. Not everything has, from the updated NHL data that's available on the town's website, does everything have a parcel ID number. So there's a data set that wasn't consistent. Just it's that kind of semantics that they've been working on all together. And I'll let the GIS experts, I know GIS, but you know, that's not like they do. So,
and we're going to get a memo about this, but so
yes,
Holly,
yes.
is the issue that to proceed with the survey plan, they need an accurate list of all of the properties that are potentially historic in all of the different areas, and that's part of their plan?
I'm not sure I follow. I
Well,
mean,
I'm just trying to understand, because they're not surveying the whole island, but they are preparing a survey plan for the whole island.
So each, yes. So basically, that map that we all created with them, and then our subcommittee worked with them. There's about 39 to I think 40 maybe areas altogether that we divided the island into. Some obviously are denser than others, and that's why we have smaller areas. The survey plan, part of the outcome, if you will, of that is to identify the parcels that are in there. I've given them lists of roads that are in those particular areas based on our, divvying up the island, that will help benefit once they've being able to, which they've probably done, but I haven't seen it yet, is really identifying those particular areas. So yes, this data set is going to help. It's needed. It's a requirement. So that way the end product that we've all asked for in our scope can be provided, again, because it's never been done. The only thing that I've done or requested prior to PAL getting involved with is our primary or preliminary key of representative buildings that came out of the update to to the NHL data. That was something that I had our GIS coordinator do about a couple of years ago, and it gave me data sets. They have that as well, but nothing has been such extensive of our National Historic Landmark District. And that's obviously going to be helpful in creating a survey plan for the entire island to exactly do that, to figure out whether or not this area needs to have individual Form Bs, or do we need to do an area form? And that's really where the GIS is the basis, and GIS is the basis for all the data. So
Great. Okay, so just to summarize then, Holly, so we're a little behind. They haven't been able to deliver the phase 2 report when they expected, but it's because we're doing really important work to clean up the data set that will help us really use the information that we have. And this has always been a concern of this commission, that we want to do these surveys, but we want to make them accessible to everybody so that they'll really be used and make a difference with the decisions we make about these historic resources. So this is just a little bit of a, whenever you get into a project and you don't really know what you have, where you want to go, sometimes you come into unexpected information or hurdles that you need to solve. And so they're working on that. And they said that they would follow up with a memo. So Holly, I guess, will you distribute that to all of the commissioners when you get that?
upon receipt, I will let you all know.
Great.
Sounds like I'll get it next week.
Thank you, Holly. And I know it was a lot of time from you helping to navigate all of that and get them oriented. So there's a lot that goes on behind this that we're not even aware of. So
Correct.
thank you for that.
Mhm.
And will so there was a memo in the packet just about the additional budget funds and a proposal from PAL about how to apply those. Is that specifically related to this issue that they've come into, Holly?
It's going to be helpful because as you can imagine, while they're tackling this work, there's things that come up, there's time that comes up that needs to be utilized. So I can only imagine that this is going to assist with these time restraints. Again, they're taking such a small grant, really and truly, with the town's match, and trying to create a survey plan and a pilot on top of that. Very time, restricted and all that. So as far as this supplemental scope, yes, that's going to be helpful. If it's okay, can I go into that?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay. So as we've discussed before, that I've been really adamant on making sure that we can utilize that additional $5,000 that we through our taxpayers through town meeting voted for fiscal year 2021, which was the residual of our grant that we received. And so in order to utilize it, need to get the ball rolling to make sure that it's actually allocated prior to the ending of this fiscal year, which is June 30th. So I know you all, there was discussion about trying to come up with a different idea. And I know one that Mickey worked on was taking that funding and utilizing it for basically surveys of town-owned resources. And when Mickey provided that to me, I also added additional information onto it, and I think I provided it to you all at the last meeting. I did have a meeting with Jenny, a phone call actually with her, and basically, and this is Jenny's from PAL, and asked her what exactly would they be interested, A, because I can't assume that they're going to be, and B, what they would want to utilize that funding for. And I also did provide all that documentation information for looking at our town-owned resources. So said, here you go. Let me know. And she came back with this. And quite frankly, I think this is the best approach. Going back to the concerns of really tackling this survey plan, which is what we want to be done. We want it clean, because this is going to be our map moving forward. So taking that additional $5,000 and splitting it in half as she's proposed in this scope, A, is consistent with what town admin and finance department looks for when you're extending an existing scope. Has to be similar in key, and B, it also is with what we need to accomplish to moving forward. So I know there may be some, not happy with that process, but I hope you all do see the benefits of just going with what she's proposed and moving forward.
Mickey?
Yeah, I read that little her proposal, and I'm still not really clear what we're getting for the additional $5,000 beyond what we've already agreed earlier. I mean, I may not be reading it carefully enough, I guess. Could you explain to me what else we're getting for that money? Holly, thanks.
Yep. So basically what I just addressed, specifically to help with the survey plan, we've identified actually 59 neighborhood survey areas. Okay. So there's a lot of GIS and assessor data information that needs to be done. So this will help that. And additional staff time allocated to those tasks on their end. And then also to complete the fish lots through what our existing scope has. And I don't know if you all remember, but there was some additional information that you all were looking at. And that's going to actually consist of doing a little bit of research. She's outlined approximately 1/3 of the properties in the survey have historic summaries or reports already prepared by MPT or PIN, Preservation Institute Nantucket. But the additional staff time will be directed towards additional research for those properties that do not have write-ups. So again, it's to kind of, my way I see it is to robust a little bit of what we've already asked for in the original scope. And again, quite frankly, I think that's the best action to go through.
So,
and again, the last thing we want to do is to give this money back. And it's already been allocated through town meeting. We don't want to lose it. You don't use it, you lose it, so to speak. We have PAL on contract. This has already been actually looked at from town admin and finance, and they're actually ready to submit it to the select board for their sign off.
So we're not getting more surveys, more houses or buildings survey. We're just getting more information about the ones that we've already contracted.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, are there any other questions about the survey work? Any other questions for Holly? Holly, did you have anything you wanted to say about the next round of surveys? I know you have a call, a kind of a kickoff call on the 26th of May.
Yes. So every round, the local project coordinators, obviously I'm this local project coordinator with the state, gets together, and obviously we do it through Zoom, and we'll have a meeting. Mine is for May 26th in the morning, and we're going to receive a copy of the project coordinator's manual. Of course, I already have one here, but I've also been told that there have been some changes that MHC has put through their procurement guidelines. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff that you all don't have to get involved with, but I do, because again, this is federal money coming from Congress through the state historic preservation offices to us. So it's very prescriptive, very hands-on, little steps that need to be taken place. So I will also have an opportunity in this meeting to hear what other communities within the Commonwealth that received CLG funding or MHC funding, which is really nice. I think the last time or the first time I remember other communities, and they're doing exactly what we're doing, a phased approach. Some of them were at the beginning like we were, and some of them were in the middle, some of them were at the end, some of them were completely different type of projects, but I thought it was really neat to be able to hear what other communities are working on from the preservation funds. So I will definitely debrief you all at our next meeting.
Thank you, Holly. Yeah, so now we get to do it all over again, basically.
Yes.
We're marching through the island, so that's
Yes.
great. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, I just wanted to create some space if anybody wanted to discuss any of the outcomes from the annual town meeting. We have some bullet points on the agenda about the various things. Does anybody want to say anything about that? No comments about town meeting? Come on.
Well,
Clement.
Hillary, I just want to make sure that there's follow-up on those issues. I know the pools and the spas, and basically it was identified that no one wants pools and spas in the historic district. But I would like to see all of this documented and agreed upon and certified, or whatever needs to be done, that is going to be the truth going forward, or whatever you want to call it. Seems like a lot of things were kind of pushed aside to another group, another committee, or another. So I'd like to see the follow-up on that. That's all. Holly has her hand.
Holly, do you want to brief folks on the zoning article change?
Well, I can, as far as anything that was approved through town meeting, it has to be formally approved by the Attorney General. That takes a couple of months. There's a process and procedure that Plus staff works on, submits it, very, again, prescriptive. And then the Attorney General's office takes a look, reviews everything, and will come back with their final yay or nay. So that's the set in stone, if you will. So pools and spas, obviously, it was voted no. So as you all basically, if the Attorney General comes back and says, yep, then that's the set in stone that you're looking for, I think, Clement.
Yeah.
I can just speak on the work group that was voted in on, if you will, for solar. I'm glad it went that way. And I have received quite a bit of interest. So that will be good once the HDC starts formulating that committee and moving forward. The existing design guidelines are from 2009. And as we know, the solar technology has changed, but amending the special act is not the way to go. Amending the design guidelines are. And the way I feel very wholeheartedly on is that's like keeping the Constitution pure. And when you want to change something, you do amendments. That's the way I see that. Very similar. So looking forward to when that gets going, and I'll keep you posted on that too.
Thank you, Holly. The other items, one thing I'm thinking about is the Pleasant Street sidewalks. I'm really happy that town wants to continue to, the town meeting wants to continue to allocate funds for sidewalk repair. It's sorely needed. I am concerned that we just, don't have an agreement with the town about what it means to restore a historic sidewalk. That just really never got finalized as much as we pushed and pushed and pushed. And I do think the study that we had proposed to the CPC for a grant to have some, materials suggestion and design ideas about how to manage trees is going to be especially important on that Pleasant Street section. So, I have a promise from the town manager that she'll consult with us and get our advice when it does come time to do work on the historic sidewalks. And, just because money was voted doesn't mean anything is going to happen soon. We very much hope something will happen soon, but, it's just everyone's overtaxed. The DPW is extremely busy, but we could send another letter from our commission thanking the town for advancing the request for funds and expressing appreciation and kind of reiterating that we think it would be helpful to have guidelines and materials analysis, materials suggestions, design suggestions, and that it's going to be very difficult to figure out in the field or just figure out on the fly how to deal with these historic sidewalks and have the project really end up looking the way people want it to look. Do you think it makes sense to send another letter? Matt Fee is on. Matt, are you, can you weigh in on this? Or are you, I don't know if he's in the middle of something else right now. Oh, here he is.
No, hey.
Hi.
No,
Thanks for
hello.
joining
No, I
us.
am in the middle of something else, but no, a letter, a reminder, a friendly reminder is always helpful. The staff is overwhelmed. They have a million things going on, and a reminder that you have concerns and are willing to help and work would not be inappropriate.
Okay. All right. So we've had a sidewalk working group, which has been Mickey and Angus, I think, and me. So maybe we'll send, do we have your permission, commissioners, to, or endorsement to develop a letter and send it
Yes.
to the town manager? Okay. So we'll go ahead and do that. And it'll be consistent with the kind of communications that we've had before. Another item was my article 81. So that was also referred to the, to the NP and EDC for further study. And I wanted to ask the commissioners if they felt it would be helpful to have any kind of comment about including preservation planning as a perspective. If they wanted to have any input about preservation planning, given that town meeting asked the NP and EDC to review their composition and any updates to their special act.
I would think it would be obvious that Historic Commission should be involved with long-range planning.
Mickey, did you want to say something too?
Well, no, I think it's an important thing that we do keep on that. I think that it needs to be, brought to the NP and EDC to consider preservation. So I want to make sure we follow up on that.
Okay, well, does anybody have a suggestion about the best thing to do?
I
would,
Tom?
How to put it on, how to get the NPEDC to include it?
Well, just what, just do you send an ambassador to make a request? Do we ask how, do we work through staff? Do we just send a letter? I don't know. What do you
I
think?
just find it incredulous that a town like Nantucket does not already have preservation planning as part of the NPE and EDC. I mean, it's hello.
Well, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Tom. I mean, I think the NP and EDC would probably say, well, of course we consider preservation planning. I mean, that's what they would say.
So the study group that they're forming, do you know who that is consisting of?
No, they met last Monday of this week, I think, and they didn't talk about it at all. They didn't talk about a study group. I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
You, Holly, do you know what they plan? No.
No.
Well, then maybe just a letter from us to the NP and EDC saying we're looking forward to seeing this progress and would like to stay involved. I mean, at least just to get them hearing from us and on their agenda to some degree.
Okay. Would anybody like to take the lead on putting that letter together and sending it?
I mean, I can work with somebody on it. I'm probably not the best person to write this letter, but I could help.
Mickey, do you want to do it together?
Sure. Thanks, Angus.
And it's not that I don't want to be involved. It's just that I don't think it should just be me if it's something that comes from the commission, given that I'm the one who moved the article. So,
That makes sense.
okay, so anybody who wants to work on that, as long as it's not a quorum of the commission, can go ahead and work on that. Is that all right with everybody? Any?
Yes.
Okay. All right. The next item, is there anything else about town meeting? We didn't talk about Easy Street, but I also want to kind of move things along because we're half an hour into our meeting. Any other comments about town meeting? Georgia, you've been quiet. Did you want to say anything?
I'm a little, I was happy that I was happy that the regulations on short-term rentals at least were referred to a committee. And I've been wondering whether it would be appropriate for somebody on this commission to be on that committee, but then I'm not quite sure that we have a direct responsibility in that regard, and therefore I'm not going to, that was why I was not going to say anything about it. I don't think we really need representation there, but I'm happy to see that it happened. And I'm hoping that the committee will be constituted and relatively quickly, and with people who have interests in and stakes in the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Let's go on to our next agenda item, which is another outcome of annual town meeting article 66, which the select board brought for the historical commission, was approved. So now our commission is officially, by an act of town meeting, 7 commissioners and no alternates. Susan, you will continue to be our alternate until your term expires. And we hope we'll, continue to stay involved. And Ben Norman, his seat will just go away at the end of June. And Barbara White is stepping away, but very much still wants to be a friend of the Historical Commission and stay involved and continue to assist with the surveys. So that's Article 66. And of course, we have 2 folks up for reappointment who are both planning to seek reappointment, and that's Clement and me. I have put my application in. It's due on the 27th. Clement, have you?
I have as well. Yes, my application is in.
Okay. So we'll just see, how that goes. There's a schedule, and we'll just follow it. Any other comments on composition? Oh, one other comment. So Dawn is our select board liaison, and there's a process for committee assignments from the select board. There's a spreadsheet of all the committees that have select board representation. And, because we are recently reconstituted, well, 3 years ago, but relatively recently, we haven't been on that list. And I meant to drop a line to Erica, but I forgot to do it before it came up on the select board on Wednesday. And they made committee assignments, and the Historical Commission wasn't a commission that they discussed. But I mean, we certainly would very much like to continue to have a select board liaison. If Dawn would like to continue to serve, that would be wonderful. I'm seeing that Matt is listening in on our meeting, so maybe he would like to serve. Yes, Tom.
This isn't, I wanted to ask a question, not about that, but about the reappointments. You say it's on the 27th. Is that when they're due, or is that when they reappoint, you get reappointed?
They're due on the 27th, and then I think it's June 8th. The applicants present to the select board, make a statement.
Yep.
And of course, the applications for all of these committees and commissions will be in the packets for June 1st and 8th. And then on June 22nd, they actually vote. I see Holly nodding, so I guess I have my timeline right. Thank you, Holly. So yeah, I certainly plan to be at the meeting on the 8th and on the
As do I. Yeah.
and so we'll comment.
Okay.
Yes. Angus, did you have a hand up?
I just wanted to say about the reappointments, if this is an appropriate time, I just wanted to know if it would be an appropriate thing for the board to make comment as a board about the reappointments. Because I know I certainly want to send a letter of support for both of you and your reappointments. But as a whole commission, is that something that we can do just to do?
Holly, did you have a comment?
I would just be cautious on having the commission do any type of, because you all are appointed. So it's a little different. I don't know. That's up to you, but I would be cautious on that.
Matt,
Yeah.
did you?
Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, if you want to talk to select board members individually, or you feel strongly or something, but I don't know if I'd send a letter directly from the group. I think it could be, it could backfire and be like, well, great, this is an insular group that doesn't want anyone else in it. I would be careful, but if you feel strongly, you can reach out to any of us and say, hey, we've done a great job. We've got a great committee. You can do that, I think would be more effective.
Thank you for that, Matt. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that just in my communications with Dawn, it sounded like she was just awfully busy, and it's been a challenge for her to join. So if there is another member of the select board who would be interested in being a liaison, that would be most welcome.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, if Erica puts it as an appointment and we do it, that's great. If not, I'm willing to try to be here whenever I can, as long as you send me links, and as long as there's only two of us, we aren't, if Dawn shows up too, we aren't doing anything wrong. So either way, I mean, it's sort of, I wouldn't make this a big topic. We'll try to, I think one of us should try to be here. And if Dawn, I'll talk to Dawn, and if she doesn't want to be, I'll be here, one or the other.
Thank you, Matt.
All right.
Thank you, Matt.
Great.
Okay, great. Any other comments about this topic? Tom, did you have something you wanted to say? No, okay. Okay, so moving on, the next agenda item is the lighthouses. So I decided kind of on my own, actually, just to make space on our agenda to talk about this. I haven't talked with anybody in the town about it. I did expect Ken Bogran to be on this call. Sorry, Holly, did you?
He did tell me that he's planning on coming. He's just be late.
Okay. And the reason for the agenda item was, the role of the Historical Commission is to advocate for the protection of important historic resources in the town. And we have the ability to, we can't really make, there are a lot of things that we can't wave a magic wand, but we can advocate, we can educate, we can bring information to the table in hopes that we inspire other folks to act. We have these two historic lighthouses. I'm going to actually go ahead and share my screen so that we can look at the memo here. So we have these two lighthouses. Sorry, I should say that one of them is historic, Brant Point Light, and the other one is a reconstruction. And is not considered a historic lighthouse. Both of them are really in perilous condition. So I'll just speak a minute about Great Point Light because it's been less reported on, but it is really in difficult condition. So this is a report from the International Chimney Corporation, which is the group that was involved with moving Sankaty. Which is, as you saw from the memo, the structure is owned by the Sconset Trust at this point, and it was purchased. It takes an act of Congress to deaccession a lighthouse for the Coast Guard, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security, to deaccession a historic lighthouse structure. There's a whole mechanism to do it, though. There's a process defined by the Park Service. But it is an act of Congress. So that was done in 2007, specifically because they were monitoring the bluff erosion, and they had to move the lighthouse early enough that they could still get all the vehicles around it. So it was actually a grassroots group that then got Sconset Trust involved with this incredibly successful initiative of moving and saving Sankaty. And that was International Chimney Corporation was involved with that. So what they said is that, as you can see from this excerpt from 2015, the lantern deck is edged with a detail that entraps water and appears to drain or link behind the stone veneer. And if you go in the lighthouse, you'll see that it's really rusted inside. There's cracks inside. A big chunk of the outside fell off. People don't see it because it's on the backside where all the seals are and you can't walk there. But it has real structural problems, and it's caused the trustees of reservations to feel that they shouldn't even spend the money painting it because it's not in a condition for the paint to last. And the other thing about Great Point is that it's not actually a historic lighthouse. So this is a wonderful memo that Dr. Cartoonan sent me with various notes that hopefully you all had a chance to read. And so even if we did want to deaccession Great Point, I'm not sure it would be possible because it doesn't really fall under that mechanism established by the Park Service. All of that applies to historic lighthouses. It wouldn't be available to receive grants. So,
May I say something about?
yeah,
that?
go ahead.
So I used to be a ranger up there, and I think if the government had their way, they would just have put a pole up with a light on it. And I think Kennedy is the one that really saved all that. With that said, for the 5 years that I worked up there, they have a party for some of the heavy hitter donators right up in the parking lot there, just before you literally go another 100 yards to get to the lighthouse. And they have tents and they have, you know, a whole wine and dinner and everything else. I'm not sure. It's certainly not our purview, like you say. But if this organization wrote a letter to a certain group that has to do with the trustees at their home headquarters about getting that group of donors to maybe come up with enough money to do the repointing and that kind of thing that is necessary with the lighthouse, that might work. I mean, those people have the kind of funds that could do that. I know they do.
So,
And what I'm getting at is that's only going to get worse on the north side of that lighthouse because that's where the weather comes from. And like you say, nobody sees it. And they need to do that sooner than later because it's not going to get any better. And once the ice and the water gets in there and they get the thaw and the expansion, it's even more and more and more is going to come out of there. And the lighthouse would be in danger of coming down. I mean, we used to give tours up there, you know, a walking tour, take people up the top. That just the rangers would have the code, and we'd give people. I remember giving a tour to the grandchildren of the guy who I'm talking about. Is the guy you send that letter to?
I think I know who you're talking about.
Okay. In house in Monomoy, and that guy might be able to get it done. So
Well, so Tom, I think you're right. You know, the money is probably not the problem when it comes to these lighthouses. And I should disclose, although I don't consider myself one of those heavy hitters, I have served on that property committee at Great Point for 15 years. And it's like Christina Jelemy is on that committee, Pam Lohman is on that committee, the Seaclasses are on that committee. So there are people who really know and care about the area on that property committee that is a donor group supporting the refuge for the trustees of reservations. And I served as a director of the trustees for 6 years and have volunteered for over 20 years with that organization. And they care very much about this. The problem is, even if they wanted to repoint that lighthouse, they can't, because it belongs to the Coast Guard.
Well, I'm not sure that it does belong to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is responsible for maintaining the safety which the lighthouse provides in terms of the light and the batteries and that kind of thing. I'm not certain, but I think that the trustees own the lighthouse.
Tom, I
mean,
can
that-
tell you absolutely, I'm sorry, but they don't. It
Okay,
is
all right, well, that's
owned by
fine.
the Coast Guard. And we've
I
had
wanted to go-
discussions.
I wanted to go even further with this because the pictures that you sent of Brant Point, I don't want to change horses in the middle of the stream here, but the pictures that you sent of Brant Point were very, very telling. Some of those close-ups of the corners and the rust and
Yeah.
the fact that the wood is coming apart and stuff like that. I mean, those are important photographs to get out. and
Yeah.
So the public can see, because it's coming apart. It's the
Yes.
second oldest lighthouse in the United States, second only to Boston Light. And if that is not worth saving and spending some money on, I don't know what is.
Absolutely. And those pictures were taken by the Nantucket. They're published by the Nantucket Current. So yeah, I think it's raised a lot of concern, Tom, and I think the majority of people probably agree with you, which is why, so I went back to my notes. Let's just stick on Great Point for a little while. I went back to my notes with the property committee, and we as a committee have been talking about this since 2017. And specifically, we talked about engaging with congressmen to try to do something, with the Coast Guard to get them to repair the lighthouse, repoint it so that it was waterproof again. And I have requested updates about if letters were sent. I understand that they were sent. I haven't seen them. But anyway, here we are 5 years later, and the condition is just worse. I don't know if it will last another 5 years. And with the situation about Great Point, it's not a historic lighthouse, so there's really nothing protecting it. I mean, the Coast Guard literally could take it down and put a pole there.
Right.
If it were a historic lighthouse, then it would be protected by the Historic Preservation Act of 1966, which protects all structures owned by the federal government or receiving money from the federal government from destruction or adverse effects by the federal government.
The original Great Point light was a pole.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's right. It was. So, I don't know if we want to go to this right now, but I think when I was sort of like turning this over in my mind, it just seemed like our job as a historical commission is to nominate structures for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places. So even though that lighthouse is not 50 years old, we could decide that it would be important to engage in a discussion about whether or not it should be considered culturally significant and a historic place and afforded the protections of the Historic Preservation Act of 1966.
Which is why I was thinking of instead of sending some kind of a letter to the Coast Guard per se, why not send it to the Secretary of the Interior and start right at the top and let that go down to the Park Service and filter down through, and maybe also send one to the Coast Guard. But if you start with the Secretary of the Interior and tell him all the things that we're discussing here right now, maybe somebody will realize that it might not be the original and it might not be in the original location, but that's the nature of Great Point.
Does anybody, thank you, Tom. And I just want to get some other people into the conversation. I'm sure there are lots of people who have thoughts. Does anybody else have anything that they want to comment on about Great Point before we talk about, but yes, Angus.
Well, there was the original offer when it was destroyed in the 80s of, is it replaced with a pole or kind of a miniature plastic replica or fiberglass replica. And instead, we ended up with 100 yards of reinforced concrete to recreate the facsimile of the original structure. And so it's, I know we're not to the 50-year mark, but there is history to it. There's certainly history to what it was replicating. So it seems like there should be some sort of protections in place or something that we can do to, keep it from its demise through the weather.
Yes, and there is precedent, I'll say, for recognizing historic reconstructions as contributing to a National Historic Landmark or as being, individually significant. Actually, the reconstruction of the Mayflower, the ship, the Mayflower, it's a historic reconstruction. It was done from, everything we know about the original Mayflower. It was made in England in the same place where the Mayflower was made. And then a individually important, I don't remember the name of the crew, but a guy who was sort of very important to the whole preservation movement and sailed it to America. And it did turn 50, but then they made the reconstructed Mayflower a listed object on the National Register. So there is precedent, and I think we'd want it, Tom, your point about the Secretary of Interior, I think if the argument is what this commission could do to help Great Point would be to register it or, nominate it for inclusion, that would need to go to the keeper of the National Registry, and that person is employed by the Park Service. And we would want to do it in dialogue with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. We could learn a lot from them. And I see Holly is nodding vigorously here. So I think there's a very well-defined process for nominating these structures. And, the Coast Guard would be informed, but this is something that, we could do the research. We would prepare a Form B, and we would go through the established channels to nominate it as a historic structure. And we would try to make the case based on the fact that it is an accurate reconstruction. It's certainly not young. It's, 37 years old. And its associations with Teddy Kennedy as well, I think, would merit consideration. Yes, Tom.
I don't think they have to go through the whole Megillah that they did before to build it with, barging stuff in and staying away from the dunes and things like that. I haven't seen it because I've been retired from up there for almost 5 years now myself. But I think some of that work could be done, or if not most of it, could be done sort of from a bosun chair, if you will. If they can get the concrete to somebody, they could do a lot of that repointing hanging rather than going upward. And just depending on how big the chunk is that's out of there now.
Clement.
Hillary, I couldn't agree more. I think that as a commission, this is where we can start by trying to get it designated as a national landmark. I think the whole process of how it was redone, as Tom just referred to, barging everything in, it was fascinating how they got that cement done, and the workmanship was incredible. I mean, it obviously didn't last, but if it is a national landmark, then it becomes easier to get the funds, and then we decide, or not we've done. I think as a commission, by getting it nominated is the first step. And then whoever decides is responsible for the restoration, and who decides to pay for it is kind of not our commission's responsibility,
right.
But it gets everything started and gets everybody talking about it. And who has to, is it the Fish and Wildlife? I understand they own the tip of Great Point. The trustees are certainly involved, but just getting it to be the national landmark that it is because of its history and its facsimile reconstruction. I think that would be the first step.
Does anybody else? Thank you, Clement. Any other? So we're having like a multi-phase sort of complicated conversation, but what we're talking about now is, as Clement just summarized, if we could nominate this, which it's not easy, like we'd have to do a lot of research, we might need some money to do it, but we put together a nomination, and we help, we get if we can get help from Holly, that would be great. But we nominate it to we send a request to the Massachusetts Historical Commission to nominate it, and they would forward that on to the Park Service. But if we do that, that gets it, on the National Registry, or it gets it, in our case, it would be determined eligible, which affords it protections, but it doesn't get it fixed. So the only way to get it fixed right now, either of these structures, and now we can kind of talk about both of them, is to get the Coast Guard to fix it. The other way to get it fixed is to get the Coast Guard to de-accession it to a nonprofit or a municipality. And there is, I'm not coming to you today with all of the research done about how much has happened on this, but there are hundreds of lighthouses that are historic and that are transferred by the Coast Guard to municipalities who then have friends groups who take care of them, or to private organizations. And we have one lighthouse, of course, on the island, Sanctity Light, where that has happened, and it has led to the wonderful preservation using CPC funds. We cannot use our CPC funds on these federally owned structures because there's no way to put a preservation easement on them. So that's really the next step, is what can we as a historical commission do in terms of identifying the issues and maybe advocating for and paving the way for maintenance, either by getting the Coast Guard to do it, if that's even possible, or identifying some process and some receiver who would want to take these lighthouses. And I saw Holly had her hand up. Holly?
Thank you. So as you all, everybody is concerned about the status of Brant Point. I want to speak about Brant Point. I receive communication from the public, like everybody probably else does, and was in contact with a lady who was very adamant on trying to see what she could do as a citizen to get the Coast Guard to recognize the fact that Brant Point is such a horrible condition at the moment. So I've actually had communication since February of last year, so this isn't new for me. And I have been in contact with an officer in charge over at Woods Hole, who basically relayed to me that they understood that there were concerns, and that they were working on basically doing a lead and asbestos testing. And it was determined that they have lead inside the lighthouse, but the walkways are fine, nothing around the ground. So that's good. Basically, I want to speak to talking about the outsourcing or not outsourcing, but basically selling the lighthouse. My understanding from, I actually spoke to another lieutenant out of Rhode Island this week. Actually, he was responding to my email from earlier this year to this other lieutenant. So again, I've had correspondence, but not consistent correspondence, unfortunately. Asking again, what's the status, what's going on, concerns. Obviously, it's not just for citizens to go and I'm going to go paint the lighthouse. It can't be done that way. It's going to be between 10 to 12 years before the Coast Guard would be wanting or willing to sell Brant Point, is what I've been told. And there's also about 10 projects that the Coast Guard unfortunately has before this one. They understand the importance of Brant Point. obviously to Nantucket as well as to the Coast Guard. However, I do have another contact who is in charge of all the structural components of and reviews and whatnot that I have not corresponded with yet, but I will be doing that. So I just wanted to mention that, you know, staff has been well aware of this. I have even copied town administration with my correspondence that was done through email previously. And hopefully we can, you know, get some type of progress going on. I don't know what the next step is after the fact, because I found that out in July about basically what was going on with the review. So this gentleman that called me this week, he told me this contact that I need to talk to on the structural, a lieutenant commander right out of Rhode Island. So again, I'll be doing that and finding out what we as concerned citizens and the town express that, you know, and there's people that go right to the town. What can the town do? Unfortunately, as you all know, the town's hands are tied. But I'm willing to, obviously from a HDC perspective, you know, I've explained about the minimum maintenance requirements. You know, obviously from the top down, you want to lead by example. I've explained our like-kind replacement process. You know, there's only so much that can be done, but I'm hoping that I'll have a good conversation with this gentleman that I have contact for. So.
Thank you, Holly. I see George Butterworth has a hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question. Is it ever possible to privately fund or repair something which is owned by the government with the government's permission? I do know that that is how they saved Old Ironsides. That was a public campaign to raise money from school children. And the Navy kept ownership of the ship, but the funds to repair Old Ironsides were raised by the general public, not by the military.
That's interesting.
I can actually speak to that. So that was one of the things that this lieutenant explained to me, that the lieutenant commander that I am going to hopefully get a communication with can explain the legalities behind that. Basically outgranting with the town, allowing us to get the funds or fundraise for it, because they do understand, but it's also expensive. So yes, there is a process, and I'm hopefully going to find out the legalities behind that.
Tom?
With Brant Point being such an iconic thing for Nantucket, I mean, it's one of the first things that the new people come to see, and it's certainly the last thing that they see is where they throw their 2 pennies overboard, and the roof is coming off, for crying out loud, and literally. And I can't, if this board does anything, I think that it would be our responsibility to get the town fired up about getting the Coast Guard to do something about it. I'm an auxiliary Coast Guard, as some of you know. We're having a meeting on the 25th. I have to be down there on the 25th. I could certainly, I'm sure Holly's already talked to Andrew Bavione. He's the CO down there. And the fact that she's talked to the people at Woods Hole who are in charge of Brant Point, I know they're aware of it, but until the squeaky wheel starts really squeaking, the government isn't going to do anything. Let's face it, you know, that's just the way it goes.
Well, I think that's why we have, you know, why we're having this conversation today.
Right.
Tom. So you're right.
We need to, you know, I mean,
You were right.
I think it's important to have this conversation about both of these locations. Really do.
You know, one of the things that I wanted to figure out, and Holly, it sounds like you've made some progress on this. So, you know, we heard through the reporting that the Current did, and we have Jason on the call here if Jason wants to give any additional information that wasn't in the piece that we included in our packet. That the navigational group is maintaining the navigational light, and that's out of Woods Hole. But there's this whole other aspect, which is the structure, and that's a building. You Holly, you mentioned they were concerned about lead. I mean, there's lead in, I didn't really get why they're doing lead and asbestos evaluation of, are you talking about the whole base and where people are living and working? Or are you just talking about the lighthouse?
Nope, it was for the lighthouse. That was for the lighthouse. Both the walkway and the lighthouse were tested.
It was that like, so is there a group, Holly, can you explain to us, like, does Homeland Security have a group that just does the building maintenance, or how are they?
So, and that's why this one lieutenant couldn't give me more details, because this lieutenant, his contact information that he gave me is the actual lieutenant commander for the actual structural of, components of their lighthouses. And he's the one that knows, yes, and he's the one that I have not communicated with yet, that has a lot more information and hopefully guidance on exactly what their next steps will be. And that's, I think, where the conversation is, to say, okay, well, what can we, as far as the citizens of Nantucket and the town, can do to help facilitate this and make sure it moves forward.
Right. And Jason, I see you have your hand up, but I just had one other question for Holly. This 10 to 12 year number, I mean, do you understand where that number has come from, or what that's all about?
No, I guess that they're not ready. The Coast Guard's not ready to decommission it to anybody within another 10 to 12 years, is what he told me.
Yeah.
But again, it sounded like this lieutenant that I was speaking to on the phone, who he saw my email that I had sent back to the original lieutenant back in April, with my whole chain of emails saying what's going on. There's been a lot of outcry on this, and it's in deplorable condition. He's the one who reached out to me, and he's the one who gave me this the lieutenant commander's contact information. Said he's the man that you need to ask and speak to. He knows more than I do. I'm just relaying a message. So I don't know if there was a broken chain of command or whatnot with the original gentleman that we were speaking with, but it sounds like this guy, he understands, and he can give a lot more information than the others.
Okay. Jason, did you want to make a comment?
Oh, hey, everyone. No, I was just going to answer your question. Based on, what was in the article that I wrote, there was not really any more information than that. And I think it was, the guys at Brant Point, I know from talking to them, it sounds like are frustrated by the situation, because they feel like they could, do a lot to fix it and work on it, but they're just have their hands tied. And the folks that were in touch with me were basically, as they said, as long as the light is functioning and it's serving its purpose, it sounds like they don't really care too much about the appearances or the aesthetics or anything like that. So nothing more that I have than what was in the story that we wrote. So. Okay,
thank you. I mean, Holly, is this something that the HDC would send if someone mentioned the demolition by neglect file, how does that come into play with federal structures? I mean, they're in our district, so.
I would be remiss if I didn't, bring that up. I did. I brought it up to the gentleman that I spoke to on the phone this week. And he understood. He's just a sounding board. He agreed with everything I was saying. He got it. So, and he kept on saying, you need to contact this lieutenant and let him know and have that communication with him. So yeah, I did say that. We, again, that's where it comes from. Lead by example. Do as I say, not as I do. I want to be able to say, we want to work with the federal government. At the same time, that's the HDC gives notices and fines for people for not doing their minimum maintenance, and clearly this is falling on the wayside.
Tom?
Well, knowing all of this anyway, that we all know what we're talking about here, which is why I originally started off earlier in this conversation with sending a letter to the Secretary of the Interior. I know he's not in the Coast Guard, but he reports to the president. And if you get somebody coming from somebody that reports to the president, I don't know if it's the right avenue or not, but I think that you have to go way, way up in the government in order to get something like this done. And I agree very much with what George said about, the private funds that they got things done on old iron sites. I was just on old iron sites last fall. And I mean, with the extent of the work that they got done there, it must have cost millions of dollars to do. And it's not going to cost that much to fix Brant Point. But I do think that, its appearance is important. But like Polly just said, I don't think the Coast Guard or the government really cares about how it looks. But we should. It's in our backyard. It's our iconic lighthouse, being the second oldest one in the United States. I think that the Secretary of the Interior would hear that. And then it could go from wherever that goes and filter down and help us out. But I think if this commission did anything, we should get some kind of a letter writing campaign and inundate them down in Washington with people that are upset about the fact that the second oldest lighthouse, which is what you come around the corner to get to Nantucket in, is falling down. And I think it deserves way more attention than they don't care if it's other than the fact that it's functioning and doing its job.
I couldn't agree more, and I imagine a lot of people feel this way. Hey, Matt, are you available to make some comments? Because, I'm thinking like here's what I've heard about the Coast Guard. So I did speak with Jean Grimmer, the interim director at Egan Maritime. Egan Maritime had discussions about acquiring through this deaccessioning process, acquiring Brant Point back in like the 2004 timeframe. And it kind of fizzled. It just sort of fizzled. These things are complicated. But what I've heard from her, and I heard also from Rob Benchley, who is the keeper of the Sankaty Light, is that who Clement thankfully put me in touch with through a role at Sconset Trust, is that the problem with the Coast Guard is that you find somebody like the lieutenant. I'm not saying this is going to happen, Holly, in this situation, but what was reported as having happened in the past is that people are always moving around. So you find someone who cares and can do something, and then like they get reorganized, they get shipped around. It's a military organization. It's not a historic, like we have people, our SHPO, and our assistant SHPO have been at the Mass Historical Commission for like 50 years. I mean, they're historic themselves. So whereas the Coast Guard, they're just moving around all the time, and that it's been a problem. So I'm just wondering, do you think the town would be willing to join us, with some kind of if we could find somebody who wanted to support this lighthouse? I'm talking about Brant Point, because it's smaller and it's really, really important in Nantucket. It's a critical icon for our landmark and our tourism, which is our economy. I mean, would the town work with us to maybe find a home that could properly take care of the structure the way we have for Sankaty?
Tough question. If you're asking, does the town have, does the town have the staff to spend, thousands, hundreds of hours, tens of hours on this right now? I'm not sure they do. So, but I think I agree wholeheartedly. It's, it's doable. It's the right size. It's not too overwhelming. I think you could fundraise and get the money for it. I think you sort of just listening to it, I thought the same thing that you guys are saying. Why don't we just let them get a letter from the Coast Guard says it's all right to paint the thing. It's all right to care for it and take, do some step like that, and then work on the long term, which is, putting it in someone's hands that'll take care of it. I think that a campaign of some type, sending a bunch of letters out with pictures saying we need to take care of this. Please help us. What do we do? What's the right way to do this? Something along those lines would help, and may shake the trees a bit. I would ask the preservation people in Boston, how have people done it? How have people done it elsewhere, short of, getting ownership of it? Has anyone done something like Ironside on other buildings? And, do they have any contacts or any advice? Would a letter from the Park Services, National Park Services to another part of the government help? I have no idea, but they might. I would follow those sort of leads first. I think the town would be willing to do it, but I'm not sure how much time the town has to really put into it. Holly could answer what she has available. But, I think the select board would sign a letter, Libby would sign a letter. I think everyone would be in favor. I don't see any reason not to be. The pictures tell everything we need to know.
On
Holly?
that point, it really, again, it sounded like a lot of our answers and questions and whatnot would be answered from this lieutenant commander. So that's my goal, is to reach out to him. Hopefully I can hear back and find out, what exactly can we expect from the Coast Guard moving forward, because again, it is a maintenance issue. But the fact that I'm also being told that there's multiple projects before it, well, then maybe it's going to take convincing how important the structure is for them to move it up the rank of work. So I will be contacting this gentleman and seeing how that goes.
Thank you, Holly. George, you have a hand up?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. When I was talking about the work on old iron sites, I'm talking about the preservation he did about over 100 years ago, not the more current.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that was a huge national campaign about 1900. The Navy was about to just let it go, and they fired up the public and raised money, private citizens raised money to save it. So,
Okay. Yeah, that things are a bit different now in
It
terms
is a
of
bit different.
bureaucracy. Yeah, and who can crawl around federal structures to fix them. So,
Right.
well, sorry, Tom.
Can I make one more comment?
Yeah.
I know I'm on this huge letter writing campaign to go high up. Why doesn't somebody send a letter to the president of the United States? I mean, he vacations here in November. He might be able to do something about it. Everybody ever think of that?
Well, yeah, or maybe David Rubenstein, his
Exactly.
friend
I was gonna
on
mention him.
Nantucket could do something. So, I think, so let's just step back and figure out where we are. There's a lot of interest in this topic. It's very important. As far as Great Point, we need to work on making this figuring out if we can have this declared eligible for listing on the National Registry. I think that's pretty obvious. Does anybody disagree with that? No. Okay, so we'll take as a point of, we've got a whole long list of work projects that we want to advance, but I think that would really help if we could nominate this as a historic structure. So let's take that as a to-do, priority to do, and we'll figure out if that can actually be made to happen. And that's something that we can do directly through our role as a historical commission. Now, in terms of the ongoing maintenance of the lighthouse and what to get the Coast Guard to do, either fix it, let us fix it, or give it to somebody who can fix it. I'd like to suggest that we keep this on our agenda for our June meeting, that we find out from Holly what she learns from the Coast Guard. Holly, I'm particularly interested in really understanding how decisions happen within the Coast Guard, who's responsible, not for the navigation, but for the structure. This 10 to 12 year number seems totally random to me. Like, what does that have to do? Like, how real is that? And who's saying that, and I certainly personally have a bias towards the idea of getting these structures, the historic structures, into private hands. If the Coast Guard would allow that, I think it'll give Nantucket more control over the structures. And through our Community Preservation Act, we've seen how beautifully Sankaty has been cared for by the Sconset Trust, and that perhaps something else could happen along those lines. I'm seeing that we do have Ken joining us. Hi, Ken, welcome. we're reaching the end of our lighthouse discussion.
Right, I'm sorry, I was just tied up on something I couldn't get off. So,
Well, we've had a lot of terrific updates from Holly about her work behind the scenes, engaging with the Coast Guard. We've had motivating speeches from Tom, auxiliary member of the Coast Guard, about the importance of bringing people who have the ear of other important people, including the President of the United States, about the condition of our lighthouses. And what we're deciding, and we also talked about nominating Great Point for listing on the National Register, and there's a lot of support for that.
Mhm.
So I think where we are is that we'd like to maybe take stock over the next month and get some of, maybe engage with the town a little bit more. Matt Fee is also on the line, and he encouraged us to talk to the select board and town manager about, supporting a letter writing campaign, or sending a letter, or signing a letter. But it's going to take more than this meeting to get an action plan together. Does anybody else have any specific comments about how to organize this or what to do? I'd like to hear from everybody on this. Mickey, do you have thoughts?
I'm totally in favor of and agree with everything that everybody's said. Years ago, I always thought that it would be a wonderful thing to get Brant Point to be accessible, handicap accessible, to be able to get the general public out there in an efficient way. And I know that's a big reach, and it's the fact that the Coast Guard owns it is almost a brick wall there. But I'm totally in favor of all this, and whether that's included or not, it's not really the issue at the moment, but I love the whole concept.
Thank you, Mickey. Angus?
Ditto. I agree with pretty much everything that's been said. And these are iconic landmarks for Nantucket in the country. And whatever we can do, write letters to wherever our contacts are. I think we need to figure out, what the most strategic thing is to do, to pursue at this point, but definitely worth pursuing.
Great. Clement?
Well, I would just say that one of the things, when you're talking about the 10 to 12 years, whether they said they'd finally get to Brant Point, the Coast Guard, I would say a great argument to the Coast Guard is we will raise the money to do it. I think the issue for them is how much money they allocate on each structure and when they can get to that. So if we could take that burden away from them and say, we'll raise the money, I think the goal is maybe we could get something done then, but in order to keep this going perpetually, I think it would be nice to have it taken out of their hands and owned by someone local, if it's Friends of Brant Point or if it's town owned or whoever it's owned, so we have better control over it. But maybe first most palatable step would to be that we could take the funding away and provide the funding ourselves. And that might get it done more quickly.
Yes. Thank you, Clement. Susan? Did you want to say anything? No. Okay. Sorry, I'm just taking a minute. I wanted to share, here it is. Just before we move on, I just wanted to share some of the precedent that there is for, and the support. I'm just going to share my screen. For moving these lighthouses into private hands. So this is the American Lighthouse Foundation. They're up in Maine. And it just emphasizes that this is not just a local problem. Like, it's a problem all over the coasts of the United States, especially the Northeast. And here's this organization whose mission is to save and preserve historic light stations and their heritage. And so there's a lot of knowledge out there about, a lot of different communities that are dealing with this problem. And I thought, maybe we could engage with them. We can just collect a lot of information and share it with a lot of people, and see if we can make something good happen here.
Can I make one final comment? I know I've had a lot to say about this subject, but if you look back on the 1989 survey of historic places, where there are only about 8 or 10 items on that list, Brant Point was one of them.
Yes. Yeah, it's very important and very historic. Okay, so expect more on this next month, everybody. And thank you for all of the information and ideas. And Holly, we really look forward to hearing what you learn. Ken, did you want to say anything else about this? I know you missed.
Yeah, the one thing, as I've shared with you, there is a track record within the community preservation committees across the state, where in fact, in appropriate circumstances, funding has been made available to it. And so, as I indicated to you, because of the fact that it would be preservation of an institution, that would be something that the CPC could consider and fund. But as I also indicated to you, the requirement is that there would be a preservation easement. And under the terms of that preservation easement, the entity that is receiving the funds then agrees to, in fact, maintain the property on an ongoing basis. In a situation with respect to the Sankaty Head Lighthouse, that's the 501c3 that has taken on that responsibility, and that's worked out well. So, however, it could be worked out relative to Brant Point is up for discussion. And I think the point that was made earlier that the funding, as Clement's point was, that the funding is not the critical issue. The issue of the ongoing responsibility to maintain and upkeep it is where the real rubber hits the road in this particular circumstance.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Ken. Okay, so moving on, just a couple things I wanted to mention. We don't have David Silver here, but David and I have been working with Mary Bergman to encourage NAREB to offer Selling Historic Homes, which is a continuing education class that the Real Estate Board of Massachusetts has authorized, or it's I guess accredited for realtors. And it's been like about 18 months coming to fruition, but we do have a date, June 8th. It's a NAREB program, so it's not open to the public. It's for members of the Nantucket Association of Real Estate Brokers. But their trainer has welcomed us to help teach the class, and I'm hoping that Holly will join us as well. And Holly's nodding, great. So the curriculum is in the packet. David, Holly, Mary, and I are developing the program. It's going to be in person at the Nantucket Hotel. And I'm just really thrilled because to be able to speak directly to the realtors in an accredited course with the curriculum developed by the state about, the complexities, but also just the wonderful experience of having a historic home and being in a historic town, and how that can be a benefit for clients and buyers and sellers is really exciting. So are there any questions about that? Okay, so the next topic is the Memorandum of Understanding with the HDC. Angus and I met with the HDC's designated representatives to continue to try to progress this Memorandum of Understanding that we've worked on as a group, we've worked on jointly, Holly and Ken have worked on, and we just have another draft. And Holly, did you hear anything back? Is that going to be something that the HDC can look at?
It's been forwarded to the commission and it'll be placed under their other business for them to have the discussion when the chair says so. So,
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The only other kind of substantive change I just want to brief everybody on is, you recall when we met, I think it was in December about this, we flagged that if we ever had the commissions meeting jointly and we needed to vote on something that we wanted to do together jointly, the NHC outnumbers the HDC. So we needed a mechanism to make sure that we had the same number of voting members. So what the MOU currently says is that the voting members of each commission will be 5 when we vote on things jointly. That the voting members of the NHC will be the 3 officers, and then 2 additional members who have the most time left in their term. And we chose that just because it wouldn't single anybody out. It would rotate, obviously, with time. It's not subjective, it's totally factual. And it just seemed like a good way to do it. Of course, you know, if you couldn't come or you couldn't vote or you had a conflict, then you would designate somebody else that would be like the next person. And the HDC could designate an alternate in that case. Are there any concerns about that mechanism or any comments?
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Another thing that was on our agenda was just keeping in mind the CPC process. You know, the summer will fly by, and we would like to, I imagine, apply for another, apply for something with CPC funds. We weren't successful with our last grant application, but maybe we can get a little bit more ahead of it this time around, and maybe solidify support from the town, which we had last time. I just don't think it got effectively communicated. I probably had something to do with that, for which I apologize, but we're all capable of learning and getting better. Did anybody want to say anything about CPC? I mean, I'd like to maybe put it on a future agenda. Okay. Now, the next item is the memo from ACRATS. We have a memo in the packet that was sent to us by Val Oliver and her other members of the organization they've called Nantucket Residents Against Turbines. I just feel like this is beyond my pay grade. Honestly, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to engage with this. It just seems like very huge. I understand that they're asking us to make a statement that these wind turbines adversely affect our landmark, and to do what we can as a historical commission using the Historic Preservation Act of 1966. But I really need help from our preservation planner and other people on this commission and in the town to kind of figure out what to do, because I really don't know. Tom.
I think they're asking us for our help because we have a direct responsibility for Nantucket being a national historic landmark, and we're supposed to be protecting that. Like you say, it's a huge thing, but I just don't. I get the feeling that the town is just decided to sell out on a thing, and it's a done deal. I don't. I've sat on those meetings, and it doesn't go anywhere, and so these people are frustrated, and there just doesn't seem to be getting any traction, and I don't know why either. It's a huge item, and if it gets built, everybody's going to be complaining about it because I think they're going to be able to see all these windmills, and it's going to be too late. And so I share your emotion about that.
Okay, Tom, and I just want to say I don't think this commission should be against windmills. And I don't think this commission has taken a position on it. What we've taken a position on is trying to understand it and try to understand what it would look like. Matt, you had your hand up.
go to Holly first, and then I think she's probably going to say the same thing. I saw she had her hand up.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, first off, I want to mention that Nantucket being a National Historic Landmark District, we have a protection under the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, which is Section 110F of the Act. Basically, that's to do no harm to the National Historic Landmark. That is higher than the Section 106 review, but it's done through the Section 106 process. And through that process, that's where the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation gets involved. It's very, very, the federal agency who has to make sure that these processes are done is BOEM, the Bureau of Ocean Environmental Management, I think something like that. Sorry, I botched it. But end of the day, where I can understand the frustration is one, yes, this is unprecedented in this country, first and foremost, and Nantucket is the one that is getting the brunt of this type of development. However, I will say this, that we do have expert counsel, the best I would say in the country, that are litigators, but they also know cultural and historic resources. One in particular of these attorneys actually worked for the National Trust of Historic Preservation during the Cape Wind decade-long plus. I remember that when I was in school. That whole, I guess, issue. And now is a TCP, a traditional cultural property, and there's been push, as you all are aware, which also received both commissions and the select board's support for the decade-long push to create it into a National Historic Landmark. Being a TCP is one step in that direction, which is great. That means none of these farms are going to be in our state waters. However, what has been done is the proposals for these wind farms off our coast are now in federal waters. We do have a special good neighbor agreement with the first company, Vineyard Wind. You've probably all seen it. I think it was also included in your packet from ACRATS. That's a good neighbor agreement. So, we really can't open up anything else on that. However, that doesn't mean that goes with all the other companies that are going down the line. They're all in different processes, procedures, whatnot, through the whole review process. There's been push from the federal government to expedite a lot of these through the review process. So as you can imagine, staff from both myself, as well as our energy coordinator, who I work very closely with, we have monthly meetings with our expert council, who are also monitoring all the other projects that are being proposed, not just off the coast of Nantucket, but also off the coast of New York and New Jersey and Rhode Island. There's multiple places. It just so happens that the first one that went through the review process was Vineyard Wind. One of the biggest things I want this commission to understand is Section 110F of the National Historic Preservation Act, because there's one thing that Nantucket has the affordability on that nowhere else has, being an NHL, is the fact that we look at the cumulative effects. What is the cumulative effect on the entire island with all of the wind farms? And that's something that where our expert council has been utilizing special consultants who know this type of thing from a cultural perspective to understand. That's the biggest thing. From staff's perspective and representing the town, and through that Section 106 process, I represent MPDC. I can't really speak to ACRATS, at all. But the fact of the matter is this commission really needs to look at the law. The law is what's important. And that's where I would recommend your push. Just to remind the commission, Tom does represent this commission through the Section 106 process. Once those other commissions come, or when those other projects come through the whole process, he should be notified. And Diane Coombs represents the HDC on Section 106. So I think that sums everything up. Matt, did I miss anything?
I don't think she did. I believe we've been very well represented by Cultural Heritage Partners, the attorneys and their consultants. The main issue, the biggest issues, changes we wanted were the front row removed, painted a certain color, and the lights taken off and only turning on when there's airplanes going over. We got all three of those concessions, plus money that goes toward preservation and other issues. And we set a fairly, because we had such good representation, we set a fairly high bar, and we received probably more than we thought we would receive. That is going to set the standard for the future ones that are all a little further away. But I feel confident that they're going to push hard using all the sort of, all the changes that have happened. There's been inflation, and we've realized there's impacts on the island, and here they are. I think this was, from my perspective, this was gonna happen. This was a push from the Democrats and from the Republicans. These things were gonna happen. And the question was, did we wanna fight tooth and nail and then eventually have it happen and end up with very little? Or did we want to do what we did, which was hire the best people in the world to represent us? And it's one of the negotiations, one of the things that I've done in my 15 years in government that I'm very proud of. I think we pulled in the right people, they did the right things. And while, it's not perfect, it'd be better if they weren't there. I think it's, it was, I think the benefit we received and the mitigation and getting them as far away as we could was, I think we did as best as we were going to do, better than any of us would have thought. So I think this is not, I think your voice will be important on the next couple, as these go forward. And I'm sure Lauren and Holly will ask for it. But I think, sort of opening that can of worms, I think it's not getting a lot of traction, because I think the people look and know that it wasn't, there wasn't a lot we could have done, and we did everything we could have and did a good job of it. So I think that's partly why it's not getting the traction. That, if this is going to get overturned, it will be in my opinion, it'll be at a federal level because of whales or fishes or something else. But I don't think it's going to be because Nantucket, doesn't want to look at them. It's going to be a major thing.
Yeah, Matt, thank you for that. I mean, looking at the basis of the ACRAT's lawsuit, so much of it is about the whales, and there's a pathway to review that, and but it's not through this commission. So this commission is concerned about visually how these devices and their associated maintenance and associated traffic affect the island. And does anybody want to make a comment about how we should respond? I mean, obviously we care about ACRATs, they're our friends and neighbors. We care about what they're doing. But I just think we have to engage in the process and keep focused on the visual mitigation. I mean, Tom, you're our representative. Do you want to, do you have a recommendation about how we should respond to ACRATs, or if we should respond?
I think ACRATs are right on the money, and I don't agree. I never thought I'd say this, but I don't agree with the word that Matt just said. I think this town has done a very big disservice to this island by doing what they've done. I'm sorry, that's the way I feel. And if I'd known that when I got appointed to this, I kind of just was told, okay, Tom, you're on it from you, I would never have gotten on it, because I don't agree with one bit of what happened. And I know what Matt said is true. We had no choice on this. It was a federal matter. But as somebody who cares about his Nantucket as much as I do, I don't think anybody on this board has any doubt about that. I said, I certainly wouldn't have done what this town has done. I think it's a travesty what's happened. And I think the guy that represented us, so far I can say it since I'm on my high horse here, I think they make money doing what they do. And so I'm not sure that, it really makes much of a difference anyway. But it's too late. It's too late. It's
well, That's the thing. I'm just trying to keep focused. We do have people who've been on our meeting, for a long time, and we do need to attend to the historic preservation tax credit discussion. I wanted to put the memo from ACRATS in front of everybody and create an opportunity to discuss it. There's a lot of division, but there's also not really anything that we can do right now, except continue to engage in this section 106. So if someone wants to make a motion that we, send a letter to somebody with some opinion, then we can, we'll put it back on our agenda. But I'm not, yeah. Ken, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just don't think this is an appropriate thing for this committee to deal with at this particular point in time. When you've heard from the preservation planner, you've heard from the Board of Select Person representative, and that this is not something that is on the top of the agenda for the town. And the town is not looking for someone having a different position at this point in time than one which it has been approved by the select board in terms of moving forward, how to deal with these matters. So, I think it was interesting to bring it forward, but I don't see that this is an area where there is action called for on the part of the commission acting in either way.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on that note, sorry, I just wanted to mention that just because we have a good neighbor agreement with one company doesn't mean we're going to have one for all of them. Each individual company is going to have to go through section 106, which would also include 110F. This commission will be able to be a part of that review process. And, that's where I think through your staff liaison and our energy coordinator, we'll be able to give you more in-depth understanding where all of these things come from. And I think there's going to be times where this commission representing the National Historic Landmark through section 106 will be able to voice opinions that would help. But yes, I agree with Ken that, that the first one, that's it. And let move forward and representing in the section 106 and upholding the National Historic Landmark at the proper procedures, if you will.
Thank you. So could I propose that as chair, I might follow up, thank Valerie Oliver for her memo and sort of summarize the discussion and say that we're going to continue to engage with the process and we'll evaluate the historic impacts as we have the opportunity to. And Tom, I know you feel very strongly, and I think as acting individually, you should continue to express your personal opinions, and we will have time. You're our representative, so this is going to come back, not in the Good Neighbor Agreement, and we'll be able to express that and advocate for. I just think it's very important to remember that we can all articulate our feelings outside of this commission, but as far as what this commission acts on, it needs to be visual impacts on our historic landmark or archaeological impacts, which this is not close enough to have. So, okay, can we move on? Is that okay? Okay. All right, so we have a request for letters of support for 2 historic preservation tax credit applications. We have Aaron Doherty with us and Polly Waldorf, the designer on the project. Welcome, thank you for bearing with us. The first is for 2 Mayflower. This is a project that we've already supported. Erin, do you want to make some comments about that?
Sure. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Erin Doherty with Epsilon. And as the chair mentioned, I'm here with Polly Waldorf, who's architect and owner's representative for this project. So we are requesting a renewed letter of support for this project. So as a general update on this project, this is for the rehabilitation of the main house and cottage at 2 Mayflower Circle. The project first applied for an allocation of tax credits back in April 2021 and did receive an initial allocation at that time. We've since reapplied in August of 2021 and January of 2022, which resulted in 2 additional allocations of credits. We continue to reapply as the project remains eligible for additional credits. So we submitted an application for the April 30th deadline with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. So this letter of support would be submitted in support of that reapplication. There have been no project changes since you last saw the project. I know there were some questions about MHC's comments on the project, and for this project, it has simply received awards in response to each application. So there were no kind of formal comment letters issued by MHC.
Okay.
I believe that covers it, but we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Erin. Does anyone have any questions for Erin about 2 Mayflower? Or for Polly? Okay. So I think what would be in order is to, if anyone wanted to make a motion to send another letter of support along the lines of what we've done in the past.
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. So all in favor, Tom,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
Clement,
Aye.
and I'm also an aye. Holly, could you make sure that, would you be willing to see that Erin gets her letter along the lines of what we've written in the past? Okay, thank you, Holly. So Erin, Holly will follow up with you on that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your continued support of that project.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. So the next project is 5 Surfside, which is a new application for historic preservation tax credits. And there's a lot of information included. I didn't include the entire National Historic Landmark nomination document that was actually in the packet, which would have made our packet like over 200 pages. But Erin, do you want to tell the commission about 5 Surfside?
Sure, I can give kind of a summary of all the documents that we transmitted, which was a copy of the full state tax credit application that was submitted for this project. So like 2 Mayflower, we're seeking a letter of support for the state tax credit application. The support letter will be submitted to supplement the state application that was submitted for the April 30th application round with the Massachusetts Historical Commission. This is the first application that's been submitted for this project. The project will be seeking both state and federal historic tax credits to support the financing of the rehabilitation. So we have in this packet copies of the project plans, which Polly will discuss in a moment. But just as a general introduction, the project involves the rehabilitation of the main house at 5 Surfside, which was constructed circa 1900. There is also a second dwelling on the property, which you'll see photographs of as well. That was constructed in 2014, and it will be lightly renovated as part of this project, but it will not be a certified rehabilitation due to the recent date of construction of that project, but it is a requirement for the tax credits that we show what's happening at that building. So that's why you see photographs and plans for that second building as well. So the project will address some long-term deferred maintenance issues. There's a lot of rot at the siding, repairs needed there, window and roofing repairs, and updates to building systems and interior finishes. The project, as is required by the tax credit programs, is designed to comply with the Secretary of the Interior standards and involves retention and repair of much of the interior and exterior finishes. There are some exterior modifications that Polly can discuss. Those were largely approved by the HDC this week. There were a few very minor changes that were requested by the HDC that will be incorporated into the project. Polly can touch on those as well. But with that, I can pass it over to Polly to kind of walk through the plans for the main house, and then we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you, Erin. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for meeting with us today. I appreciate it. Basically what we're looking at on the landscape plan, the changes that we are proposing there. We're going to add a full basement without raising the property above its current level now. So the exposed foundation will remain the same, except for that small section, the small L in the back there where you see the outdoor showers attached to it. That one is currently, the siding is right in the dirt. So we do need to raise that up. We're just proposing 6 inches, minor raise just to get it so that we don't have the siding rotting at the bottom as it tends to do right now. The window well that you see in the front, we have, after going to HDC, moved it to the side of the fireplace on towards the backyard. So that one will not be seen, the Surfside one. And the remaining window wells, we have agreed to extensive screening with, with vegetation in perpetuity. And we are also going to design those with brick, a brick cap, and then brick lined inside the well too, to kind of go with a little better with the property, since we got the brick paving that's in front of the for the parking area in front of the cottage. So those are the changes that we have there on the landscaping plans that you see. We'll also relocate an outdoor shower. It's currently now kind of in the front of the house, visible from Vesper. We'll relocate to the side. And we also will have a deck with some wraparound stairs. Sorry, reading my landscaping notes. Our fencing will remain pretty much as it is now. So I guess we should go on to any changes on the interior of the house or the first floor.
Could you talk about the addition? I mean, you are making an addition to the side of the rear L.
Yes. Where is it? Right here.
Yes, we are putting an addition here at the rear L, simply because that L, the small building on the end there, is not accessible from the inside. To get to this bedroom, it's a full bedroom. We have to go outside to get into it. So we just did a small bump out addition here of basically a hallway to access that.
Yep.
We could look at that in plan view as well. Holly, if you're able to go back to, yes.
That one. Yep, right there.
Yeah, just trying to incorporate that bedroom into the house. Other than that, the only other change on this first floor really is a basement stair going down. And then removing one small wing wall on the other side of the entry door, dividing the entry from the dining area.
Yes.
Polly, can you just talk about the, so we understand about the massing and how that's changing, which is always a concern. Can you also just talk about the contributing historic features that are being retained through this rehabilitation?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you saw, the interior doors are gorgeous. We're definitely keeping all of those. All of the windows and doors throughout the property, we're gonna interior and exterior. We're just going to, I guess, repair as needed. We're not replacing any doors. And the whole front stairs will stay the same. The front entry there, the massing, like I said, we are not raising this 1 inch on this front building and on the middle building. So the only thing that's being raised is that tiny back building, and that's just going up 6 inches.
I mean, presumably the entire building will be lifted.
Well, it'll be lifted to have a basement, but then it'll put back on at the same height.
And it's currently either, I think you said the rearmost L it's just wood in the ground and it has an existing concrete foundation. Is that what Am I remembering?
I
correctly?
believe so. I mean, we really can't see, but I'm pretty sure it's an existing concrete foundation. Apparently, I think it was put on, I don't remember, that was the 50s. Is that
Erin,
right, Aaron?
could you refresh our memory about that?
Mm,
Sure, on the foundation, I believe it's the concrete that it's sitting on, but the sill plates are in the ground, as Polly said. It's kind of sinking into the ground. But I believe that part of the building, was there by the 1930s. When we have some 1930s, 1940s, when we have some early, very grainy aerial images of the building, which are in the Form B, if we want to take a look at that. But
I have a question. Where did the 1900 figure come from?
so we have, it's based on historic maps and aerial images. It's hard to pin down an exact date. We have no building permit, but in the kind of 1890s images, there is no building there. And then by some of the early 20th century images, we do see the building there. So that's how we end at the circa 1900.
Right, okay. And you have a definitive image of it from 1930, right?
Yes, if we scroll down, I believe it's included here. So that is the
1940s aerial
1940, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
right there.
Okay,
I
Holly?
just wanted to mention, yeah, so what I brought up on this other PDF is the HDC revision. So as you all are, HDC is trying to assist applicants that are submitting, that let us know that they're submitting for historic tax credits up higher in the agenda, if you will. So HDC did approve their historic determination as well as their proposed changes. Some of the comments, HSAB had some minor comments that HDC took into consideration, as well as my own comments that they took into consideration. One of them would be changing the proposed French door with a 12 light with its kick panel, as you see here. The landscaping plan, they want to have vegetation on all, since this is a corner lot, to have vegetation on both. So of course this was approved through staff. So Polly knows what to do for that. One of the greatest things I think the HDC was very happy on, I think you all will be, I know I am, is that the proposed window well that was on the facade has actually been moved on the other side of the chimney. So that way this character defining feature, obviously visibility from Surfside is not going to be changed. So I think overall the minimal changes are actually very nice and happy to see. So I just wanted to give that to you.
Thank you. Okay, so our role here as the Historical Commission is to decide to send a letter or not send a letter, and what the letter should say to the Massachusetts Historical Commission regarding the application for tax credits. Does anybody want to make any comments about or ask any questions about the project? Please speak up. Who wants to start off? Mickey.
Nope. We did look at this at HSAB, and our only concerns at HSAB were the window wells. And they did move one of them. We were hoping they'd move the other one on the north side, but they moved the one away from Surfside Road at least. And on the whole, they're really not making massive changes to this building. They're, the exterior will look really similar, at least from what's visible. They're adding that thing in the middle back, but what's visible from any roadway is really changing. I mean, not changing at all, much at all. So, we didn't have big comments at HSAB, so I don't have any problem supporting this one.
And yes, Tom, did you have something to say?
I don't have any problems with it either. And even the little bump out that they're going to do to create a hall, I have no problem with that. So I kind of go with what Mickey said. They've moved the window well from the front to the side. And so there are very little changes to this. I don't see any reason for not supporting it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the power of the tax credit program is that it really is concerned with the historic material, whether or not it's a contributing historic structure, and if that material is retained. You know, in this case, the house is being lifted and this new basement is being put underneath, but it seemed, you know, unlike a past project that had a central chimney that couldn't really handle that kind of a treatment, I think this structure probably can come through okay. Would anybody disagree with that? No. And the fact that the massing, you know, we're also seeing the power of the tax credit program to protect the massing, which is a distinctive contributing aspect of our very simple wooden frame structures. And I think we could imagine if this weren't looking to use the tax credit program, the application would probably look very, very different. Okay.
No, not necessarily.
I'm sorry?
Oh, not necessarily. It wouldn't look different if we weren't trying to use tax credit money. This is.
Oh, is
what
that
we
Polly
envisioned.
speaking?
Yes,
Oh, right.
sorry.
No, sorry. I was
Yes.
saying we see on Nantucket, Polly, you know, I'm not saying that you would do something different. What I'm saying is that we do see a lot of buildings with overwhelming additions being made because it's less expensive to do an overwhelming new addition to a property than to lift it up and put things underground. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So does anybody want, oh, Angus.
I apologize for not having a visual. I have limited internet access, so not having the video going enables me to still participate. But as Mickey said, we reviewed it in the Historic Structures Advisory Board to the HDC. And in general, we really didn't have any issues with it because the massing and the overall feeling of it doesn't change significantly. The main concern really was the window well and window wells, and it's good to see that one is moving around. I wish both were. That's still a visual thing that even if you don't see the well itself, the light that you know is inevitably emitted from it is uncharacteristic of a historic structure to see it sort of underlit. But appreciate the work that's gone into it, and I don't have any issues with a support letter.
Yeah. So we'll see if the Massachusetts Historical Commission will agree, because there is this change to the middle L, which, you know, we don't know if they will support, but it sounds like as far as this commission is concerned, everyone is comfortable with that. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. So would anyone like to make a motion about this application?
I make a motion that we approve to write a letter of tax support.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a vote now. Mickey,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Clement,
Aye.
Angus.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So Angus, can you and I work with Holly to get that letter done? Holly, is that okay with you?
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Polly and Aaron, for the work on this project and for preserving this historic structure.
Actually, thank
Thank
you,
you for your
commissioners.
support.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're over time now. I did want to reserve some time just to talk about our work plan. Our two commissioners who are working on the small loan fund aren't here. I think it's been a really busy month with town meeting and the elections, so I don't know if anybody has had a chance. We were going to try to talk about what sort of structure the fund might have and where it might be sourced from. So that'll be for the next meeting. The project to have surveys of the town-owned structures is just gonna, I guess, Mickey, it'll just be folded into our overall survey plan, right?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, because there are other needs for that money. Holly would like to use that money elsewhere, and we support her on that. As far as the archaeology program, Susan and I corresponded a bit. I think we landed, I'm personally very pleased with how that discussion went. I think we felt that there was a need to address and talk about archaeology, and we didn't really know how to do it. So we decided to ask people in the community about what other towns do. We got a ton of really high qualified feedback, including feedback from our state archaeologists. And we discussed it at our last meeting and decided that the right approach is to have an archaeological preservation plan done by a certified archaeologist, licensed archaeologist, hopefully with the support of a grant from the Massachusetts Historical Commission. Now, the next step would be how to do that. Susan, do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, I don't really, I'm not familiar with all the processes, the legal processes of how to do things, but I think what we, or what you were kind of informing me of is that it looks like it might have to be private funds. And so I've been thinking about where that might come from, and I'll keep working on that. Because from what I understand, that's a matching grant or some sort of grant along those lines. And so, yeah, I'm actively thinking and talking to people about where we might locate some funds to start working on that that plan, and to hire a company to go ahead and do that. And it sounds like we have pinpointed, how should I say that? It sounds as though this has been done so many times in so many different communities that there's a pretty straightforward plan of action on how to begin the process and to fill it out to make it a workable kind of organized plan. So I feel pretty confident about that we don't have to, recreate the wheel. It's kind of already been done, which is great. And it's just a matter of funding, as you say, and getting the, proper group to do it for us. And it sounds like we probably have that as well already. So that's where I kind of stand at the moment.
Thank you, Susan. I mean, what I'll add is that, I think Susan and I certainly have a conviction that having more information about archaeology, about the archaeological history and resources on Nantucket is part of a whole island preservation plan. And that, we started with historic structures, but really what we want to have, and Holly's commented on this in the past to us, and is a preservation plan for the whole island. Mm-hmm. And archaeology has to be part of that. I think people don't understand it. I think people kind of fear it. Maybe, but that's why we have education and research. So I think we have identified a good path forward, but I think we also need to have support from our colleagues throughout the island.
Yes.
And if we feel strongly that they should be supporting this and we're not feeling the support or getting the support, I hope that we could understand why. Mm-hmm. And sometimes things take a little bit of time. So I guess we have 3 colleagues from the town. Ken is on the line, Matt Fee is here, Holly is here. Do you have any, could you make any comments about this idea of this archaeological preservation plan, and where you'd like to see this historical commission go from here?
May I just make one point before that? And that is that when people think about the archaeological component to the island, it encompasses the whole time stream from present day, to prehistoric. it's not all just about pre-contact social organizations. It's our whole history, all the way up to, you know, the present day. It's archaeology is just what's happening, you know, on the surface or under the surface, rather than some sort of architectural, but it encompasses architectural components that are underground as well, foundations and all types of things. So I don't want people to get stuck on one aspect of what the archaeology is. It really is information about everybody and everything through the whole course of time. So I just want to make that clear, because I think we all kind of get towards the prehistoric stuff, and that's not really the major focus on this island. Actually, the major focus is more historic archaeology. So with that said, I would love to hear from the three of them.
Does anyone?
I just wanted to mention that first and foremost, I agree with and I think I've said this before, the buy-in. And I think you're gonna be able to achieve that with education. So I think it needs to be clear on exactly what does encompass an archaeological preservation plan. As I am a proponent, obviously, of plans, I'm a planner. Preservation plans come in all shapes and sizes, like the one we're working on right now with PAL. That's its own preservation plan. Archaeology, what exactly are we looking at? As well as just as how kind of cumbersome it is to have a plan for the entire island for our architectural resources, I think it's also going to be very complex to have one for the entire island. I also do need to put this caveat, because I'd be remiss if I didn't again, but I think the town needs to give direction with that education coming from this commission on what direction to go, because archaeology, usually, you know, you can have a plan all day long and say this is what we have, but there are concerns. There are concerns on looting. There are concerns, where does, you know, the tribes have their own federal protection under the law, even with Section 106, they have their own, you know, consultation process. That's its own thing. What exactly are we wanting to achieve out of it? And again, I think with support is very important coming from the town administration, town in general, and select board on what exactly are we going to get out of a preservation or archaeology preservation plan, and how sensitive that information is, what kind of sensitivity it would have on it. And also, is this something that, is it going to down the road require the town to have a bylaw? And I say this because it's very important. People are very protective of their rights, property rights. Is this something that the town wants to go into, or is this going to be just strictly so we can understand the overall pre-contact part of our history? Again, I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So again, I think getting support would be very important.
And I'll just follow up on the comments that Holly just made. And this is reflective of the conversations that the town manager and I have had with you, Hillary, in the sense that this started off on a tangent in terms of talking about getting involved with the rights or archaeology relative to the tribes. And it seemed to be going off in directions that were not clear. From the point of view of the town's administration, there is one staff person that's involved in this, and that's Holly, and she's very, very busy. But until there, and I think this is the message that we have given to you, until there is a concept of a layout of a plan of what we are trying to achieve, how we're going to get to it and what we need to do. This is not something that the town wishes the commission to sort of move forward with and expend energy on it until there is a plan in place in terms of what it is to do, what's there at the end of the day, how does this benefit the town generally, and how does this benefit us from an overall point of view of understanding the issues that we need to face as a town and as a historical commission. So the town has not said no, but the town has said, you have to help us understand why, and you have to understand, even once we understand why, we have to understand its relative importance in the overall scheme of things that the town is seeking to address in terms of priorities with respect to its limited human and dollar resources. So that's where the town's position is. That's a position consistent that has been given by me and Libby to you over at least the last 6 or 8 months. And I don't think I can be much clearer in terms of making the town's position relative to that. And I'd defer to Matt now in terms of his view.
Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't thought about it much, but I think understanding what we're doing, you know, what it would do and how it would benefit, you know, before we dive into it would make sense to me. But to be honest, I haven't put much into it.
Yeah, well, and it's, I wouldn't expect anyone to put a lot into it because, you know, archaeology is one of our, it's something we're supposed to be doing. It's something all historical commissions are responsible for. And when this historical commission was formed by vote at town meeting, it actually wasn't called a historical commission. It was called the Historic Preservation and Archaeological Commission, because it was specifically formed, and Susan was part of it, because there was no consideration being given to awareness and instruction about archaeology, what lands might be archaeologically sensitive. And the feeling was that by trying to educate people about what might be discoverable in terms of information in the ground, either in conservation area, private area, public area, or even homeowners that might be interested in understanding the archaeological discoveries on their own properties, that's something this commission could help interpret. Because that's what historical commissions do. They invest the present with meaning given to us from the past. By understanding the past, telling stories, identifying information, and making it public. And through that, we all get, I think, a richer understanding of where we're going. So that's why we're looking at it, but you know, we're not really looking at it. We're just saying that this is what should be done if it were to become a priority. And we're also saying that it's, although we could maybe find a few donors who would want to do it, it probably makes sense to do it with the support of the town. And we understand that it's incumbent upon us to get the town interested, and the town might never get interested. So I understand that. And it's been an interesting learning journey. I hope
I think
found it interesting too.
One of the other things, you know, Hillary, thank you. You have a much better way with words than I do. And I think that, yeah, that part of our discussion that you and I have had going on is to go ahead and talk to some of these other communities about how their plans that they have gone forward with, how they're utilized by the town, and are they really useful? I mean, that's part of the discussion. Yeah. We're not saying this is the answer to anything. We're just saying that, yes, we have been charged as a historical commission with looking at archaeology as a component. And we're doing our best to try to figure out if there's something that we can contribute in this area to the island that would be useful. So it is something that's, you know, in progress and just under review, you know, as to how we might be able to use this.
That's really well said. And it's also a really good idea. I mean, why don't we ask some other towns, well, what did you do differently as a result of this information? Was it worth doing? Are you glad you did it?
That's my major focus, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, is to have some discussions with some of the people that were brought to our attention. And seem to have been very happy with the results that they had, but I haven't seen anything that says, you know, what's become of it since then. And that's what I think Ken's point is, and I think well taken, that you know, we need to know that our efforts are actually going to, you know, have some sort of result to them that is useful.
Susan, your point is well taken, because in the emails that were circulated by Holly relative to the feedback from the other towns, there was nothing that was suggesting that there was a huge benefit to the town,
Right.
or why they did it, or what the win-win situation was. So again, with limited time, resources and everything, unless there's a real benefit that takes a higher priority than some of the other things that we're trying to manage with respect to all of the issues in the town, it becomes something that doesn't jump very high on the to-do scale.
Right. So that's next on our list, is to really find out what's become of these you know, towns and their planning and going forward. So we'll get back to you with that.
Yeah, that's a great next step. Okay, well, terrific. I think we actually got through everything in our agenda. Oh my goodness, but we ran way over. So I apologize for that. I didn't realize it gotten so late. You can see the clock on my building really isn't right anymore. Okay, everyone. Well, would anybody like to adjourn, or would you like to just keep talking? No motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Tom. I'll second that. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you. And we might be able to meet in person in June, so I'll follow up about that. Be fun to get together in person. And I really appreciate, Matt, you're joining us. And George, also, thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.